to a script, but it really happened.
And nobody would believe that they built a scaffolding outside the hospital.
And stayed there all day with all of these electricians.
And that's why she really thought she was going to win, because she thought they wouldn't go to all this trouble if I wasn't going to win.
Exactly.
And she was really, she was absolutely certain, and so was everyone else, that she was going to win, because they went to all this trouble to, build a scaffolding and all of that outside this hospital room. And she just had this adorable baby, my brother, and so everybody was absolutely, Your
adorable baby that almost died. He didn't.
Yes. My brother was
So it was like
ill.
a kind of miracle that he made it
Absolutely.
at all. And this again is condensed. We condensed it into a 3-minute scene, but it was something that happened over a long day.
Yes.
Technicians coming in and out of the room and getting her all made up and preparing her for this moment when they were going to announce that she won the Academy Award.
Yeah.
And of course, she didn't.
She didn't.
Grace Kelly did.
That's right, and it was...
It was devastating to
devastating.
her. Yeah.
Devastating. And what I just love the way that this was done, because everybody's reaction. But then that everybody just packed up and went home and left her.
Yeah, they just left her. Apparently, they were actually angry at her for losing. They all kind of resented being there all day, and she didn't win.
Cords piled together. Let's go. Sound man, out. Let's go. Okay, got the cable. Move the lights. Go, 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 go.
There's an account that I read of your dad. Said that she just was like, her hands were, she was opening and clutching her hands, kept opening and closing really rapidly, and that she was like, would go from hysterical laughing to crying to hysterical laughing to, she just was so upset.
And you're on camera in front of everyone in a hospital room. It's just so devastating.
So awful.
And you have burnt too many bridges.
She probably had to sleep with Edward Arnold.
What I've heard, she would have slept with Benedict Arnold.
I hear she's an nymphomaniac.
Only when you can calm her down. What are you waiting for, Sid? Let's have a toast. To hell with them. I've got my own Academy Award.
But
My
there
son.
was that thing in her. I got my son.
That's right.
She had that spirit always.
She always had that
Let's
spirit.
move on to the next thing.
And make it happy.
Yeah. But then she went through a really rough period because she couldn't get work in Hollywood anymore because of the terrible, the fact that Stars Born didn't make any money, and it went so over costs. And she started to perform live in clubs and concerts, wherever she could get work, and she got really heavy. There was something wrong.
Well, she had cirrhosis of the liver, and she got very ill, but she blew up like a balloon.
Yeah.
And she got heavy, and on top of her being ill, she just got, she was just so sick. And what was extraordinary was, now we have to make Judy Davis into,
a fat
Puff Judy.
Garland, Puff Judy.
We made her into Puff Judy, and it was quite extraordinary, those 2 days.
A lot of prosthetics and a lot of tension.
A lot of tension.
A lot of discomfort.
Yeah, Judy Davis really was uncomfortable in all of that.
She was so uncomfortable. And did that pose any real terrible problems for you, James? In terms of making that makeup look real?
Yeah, the prosthetics, we had difficulties with it. The first day, actually, this first scene, it wasn't much of a problem. The second day, when the scenes were longer and it was hotter and so forth, it became a problem. We could see flaws in it, so we're trying to, mitigate those with lighting, and but also keep the mood of the scene too.
But how do you light it to? Is there anything special that you had to do to make the prosthetics look more real, or they looked real enough?
I softened the lighting, because if you light too hard edge of light, you'll see the divides and you'll see seams and so forth, or it can look false. False. Just really be very careful. This scene came out very well.
Yeah, one of the problems that we did have is that she's wearing this open neck thing, and I know, Donna, you had provided her with scarves, and we were we thought that it was fine, and then we found out when we actually saw the film that there were some problem areas which we CGI'd out.
Yeah, we did. We paint boxed a lot of this out.
Yeah.
Actually, not a lot. It was really just
in her
around
neck.
her neck.
In her neck and a little bit on the face.
Little bit on the face.
I did this in Toronto. When I was doing the color correction, we actually did an overlay. So there's this kind of a soft gauze overlay electronically applied. A paint box artist actually has to paint each frame by hand electronically. So actually it's like hand painting each frame. And then it was applied, and we did a dissolve over the top. It was a lovely scene.
More, that's blue. That's good. A little bit of this. Oh, you're gonna love this. Okay, keep your mouth straight. That's it. Oh, don't look, not yet. Okay, close your eyes. Got them close? Oh. There, you can look now.
She was supposed to put on real makeup, like apply makeup that would make her look pretty. And Judy Davis said to me, "Can I make her look like a clown?" So we tried it, and it worked so well that we left it in, and we kept...
but that would have been more like what my mom would have done. Made me look like a clown.
Would you do something for me? You promised me to take good care of Joe. He's not as strong as you are, you know.
I promise, Mama.
Oh, thank you, darling.
The way it was originally scripted, she was just supposed to put on pretty makeup. And actually, the lines here were originally, "Oh, Mama, you look so beautiful. I wish I could look like you."
Right.
And Judy Davis said, "Wait a minute. I can't believe any kid's going to want to look like this." So we rewrote the scene.
What's all that about?
Nothing.
Sounded like the Rat Pack had got into another brawl again.
Had a little disagreement with the caterer.
What about?
I asked if I could pay him next week, and he refused.
Oh, you know, I hate to talk about money.
Fine, forget it. Hey, why don't you two give it a rest? Leave it till morning. Do you know, we have 13 full-time people on staff. I've counted them.
Well, Judy Garland needs plenty of maintenance.
All the medicine she needs. That doesn't come cheap either.
What's this about, Sid?
We owe a lot. Not just to the caterer, Uncle Sam, too.
So pay it.
With what?
What do you mean, with what? I'm Dorothy, for God's sake. Dorothy can't be broke.
I've already had to take out 2 mortgages on the house. Haven't you had enough?
Oh, do we owe the liquor store, too? You're supposed to be taking care of things, Sid. What have you done with the money?
It's always poor you, isn't it? Everybody's always doing something to you, never you to yourself.
I am what I am. You won't change me.
This was our actual only chance in the whole movie to show the kind of volatility of their marriage.
And the tension.
They had a very volatile relationship. There's no question in my mind that your dad was very much in love with her, and many ways kept her together through very difficult times.
Absolutely.
And also, being in the position it was a very delicate one, and so a lot of the times he took a lot of heat for things that were just trying to get them through.
Mm-hmm.
But they had this apparently really volatile relationship. Lots of fighting,
they did.
lots of, separations, coming back. And your book is very, very explicit about that and really describes all of that very beautifully.
Well, because it happened.
But you kids were sort of kept out of it. You
We were
weren't-
kept out of it at times, but we heard what was going on, but we just didn't know what it was. We didn't know why they were sometimes yelling at each other and all of that. And we were also kept, in another wing of the house. But, we did understand that all of a sudden, Daddy was at the hotel.
Yeah. Daddy's at the hotel. Well, you said somewhere that they came and went so often anyway because they were always on tour that you never knew whether they were separated or they were
If they
just
were on
going
tour.
wherever they were going.
Exactly.
One interesting fact that's been eliminated from the movie for whatever reason, but I think is very interesting, is that when she was hospitalized, 20 quarts of fluid were drained from her body.
That's right. That was...
Yeah, we weren't, for whatever reason, we decided not to put that into
it
the
was a
movie.
bit
We
too
weren't-
graphic.
people thought it was a little too graphic, yeah. But
But again, she pulled through. It was
and everybody
amazing.
thought she would never work again.
They
and people
told her
thought
she would
was
never
gonna
work
die.
again.
Meanwhile, she lived and she worked a lot.
Yeah, but she pulled through again, which was extraordinary. And it was extraordinary for a 4'11" person how physically strong she really was.
Yeah, amazing stamina.
Amazing stamina.
Amazing stamina. Amazing.
And I love the fact that we did shoot the fact that, she would call him up and, have Lottie or anyone at my house, call my dad up.
This was a horrible night. I don't know if any of you remember this, but without mentioning names, she had these contacts in her eyes, and she had two kinds of fluid. One was to clean the
right.
contacts, and one was to bathe her eyes. And the assistant handed her the wrong vial, and she put the
Soap in her eyes.
Soap
The cleanser,
in her, the
yeah.
cleanser in her eye, and she was in screaming pain, and she also had this red blotches in her eye, which she was sure were never going to go away. And it was very late at night, and I was on the phone to her doctor to find out how serious this was. It was really horrible. It was
Yeah.
awful, really awful. Those contact lenses were just excruciating, and she wore them for weeks. And there were two pair, because we decided that the darker ones made her look younger for when she was younger.
Right.
And those were even thicker. And
They were
those
very
caused
heavy and dark.
incredible pain. Yeah, really difficult for her.
I love the fact that, I in this scene, I do love the fact that this is the first time you really notice the false eyelashes.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden she was glamorous and false eyelashes.
And a whole different style of eyelash.
A whole different style.
I mean, Pamela had so many, different eyelashes, and she had researched it so beautifully and
The makeup
brilliantly
person.
Yes.
matched the photographs. And the same thing with, Marianne, who did the hair. And also the style of the different times, that they really, they really kept the makeup style authentic.
I love this set because that's actually just a booth in the restaurant, and we
Yes.
turned it into a hat check
coat check,
room.
yeah.
Right.
And it's just a booth. Just below them are the seats for the booth. And this was great. We put this light
Yeah.
outside the
Yep.
window. Do you remember?
Yeah. Oh, it's a huge light.
Huge light.
The city of
And I love the
Toronto
way you-
fought me about putting it out there.
To get that incredible moment as the Carnegie Hall Overture starts. And we
And-
actually had a poster, the
Yeah.
poster, Judy, the real poster, with
Now-
Judy Davis's face, but we weren't allowed to use it for
Now, a lot of
rights
people ask me
reasons.
why we didn't use Steadicam on this, but if you listening to what Lorna describing what her mother went through before
Right.
this performance, we did the shot handheld.
Yeah, it never occurred to us to use Steadicam.
Yeah, but it's also we're in the '60s, and we start to get this handheld feeling.
Yeah, and
And
to
fun-
give it the rawness and the kinetic energy of going
And
out
once
on
again,
stage.
Donna's work. I mean, that jacket. That's the only thing that I have in my closet. I took this jacket from this movie. I said that I want the Carnegie Hall jacket because I don't know what truly happened to the
That's a
Carnegie
great
Hall
shot, yeah.
jacket, but at least I've got this jacket in my closet, so I have something. And this is that's the jacket I wanted. The only thing costume-wise, that I wanted from the movie. I did want the Carnegie Hall jacket because it was so beautifully made.
Now we only had 250 or 300 people, so we created this crowd.
We created-
You saw a CGI shot go by there. where you see
Oh,
the
and that
other-
was
We
terrific,
see the
Donna.
audience, yeah.
Well, I just remember Judy Davis in her trailer before each of these moments, and she would just, tears would come to my eyes because she'd be like getting herself in that moment in this transformation after excruciating hair and makeup and wardrobe and bodysuits and this and that. And then she'd have this moment and it would be like, whoa.
Now, these two numbers were done back to back. We did it like a
Well,
live show, and that's
yeah.
a very important thing
I
that she
think
did.
People
a
ask
huge
me all
long
the
take.
time. People ask me all the time, how did you get this feeling of a live performance?
We shot it as a live performance.
I keep saying it's because when we got there and we started to line it all up, I said to her, I want you to start at the beginning of it and go right through the applause, right through the end, and we're going to do it in one take. And I didn't know we were going to do that until we got there. And then I realized it was the only way to do it. And we just kept moving the cameras around. James kept putting the
But
cameras
the takes
in
are
different
5.5.
positions.
It was
But they're
5.5 minutes
5.5
long.
minute long
I remember
takes.
because we only get one take on a magazine.
Yeah, we never cut. We just kept doing, and I think that gave it a tremendous feeling of a live performance. I was actually at Carnegie Hall when I was a kid, which I'm sure I've told you before.
Yes,
I
you
bet you
have.
guys knew that, but I don't know if our viewing audience knew that. No,
it was really.
But what I remember most is those people running up, because I was a kid, so I remember her, of course, but I remember what was the most incredible thing to me was seeing these people rush the stage like that and put their hands up and, reach for her, and she was touching
And what
everybody.
was interesting, there's no footage of Carnegie Hall, so
No.
it came from your memory.
Yeah.
I was a kid, sitting in the audience, but I do remember thinking it was so odd that grown-ups were acting like this.
Yeah, that's how I was a kid too, so
Right.
that's what struck me. I couldn't quite believe that grown-up people were doing that. They were running up, and I didn't understand it, actually, quite frankly,
Neither
as a
did
kid.
I.
It sort of scared me a little bit.
It scared me too,
It
because
was
that
like
was
a
my
revival
mom.
meeting, yeah. And but when we filmed it, it was the impression that I had, the strongest impression I had.
And what was
of
really
that.
wonderful with the extras in this, they actually thought they were at this. I mean, they were
they were.
so phenomenal.
And so much they applaud at places that actually the audience didn't applaud. So there are more applause on this than there are on the Carnegie Hall album. Because they applauded, like here, everything she did.
They
started
applauded.
applauding. They were so excited.
And that day, I'll never
There
forget.
they go. Look, they're applauding. But they weren't really. If you listen to the Carnegie Hall album, they're not applauding at that moment.
But also, I thought it was so wonderful. My girlfriend, Dina Martin, whose father was Dean Martin, came up to Toronto on this day to watch this. And when Judy Davis came out, all dressed like that, Dina Martin almost had a heart attack. She literally went like that, and then she started to cry. And so I said, wow, we've really, if we, it was, we were sort of used to Judy Davis like that. So when other people came onto the set and saw that, I loved watching their reaction.
Well, I think she's extraordinary in this sequence.
Oh, absolutely.
And James did a whole series of this in black and white. When you see the black and white and color cut together, it really looks like we used archival footage. You
And
can
do you know
tell
that,
it's
yes,
not Judy Garland.
They had to send out a disclaimer when they sent out the press clips of the movie. They had to send out a disclaimer that there was no real footage.
Of Judy Garland.
yeah,
that
in
it's
fact,
all Judy Davis
and when-
or Tammy Blanchard.
When I showed this scene to my sister looked at me and said, "I'm so glad that you used archival footage." And I thought, "Oh, that's
And
really
she was
good."
there. Here she
right.
comes.
And I thought we did a really good job.
The reason that we chose not to do it, or I chose not to do it ultimately, was that it stopped looking like a concert and it looked like a documentary.
Usually put you outside, yeah.
And so, again, the feeling of the live performance was lost. It looked like somebody had, already viewed the footage and edited it together in some way. And so the live performance aspect of it was diminished, although I think the black and white color version is incredible.
That's the piece I'm saving.
It's so great.
The camera operators, I told them, think about Woodstock and Gimme Shelter. No, actually, that's what I told them.
So Carnegie Hall was this incredible success for her.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. I mean, the most incredible reviews. The album is still one of the biggest selling CD.
Yeah, and it's also one of the greatest live performances.
I think it's the greatest.
Yeah.
I think it's the greatest live performance ever recorded.
Ever recorded. Because they didn't go back in a studio like they do today and tweak it or anything. What you hear is what happened.
I know.
And that's great.
And they've re-released it several times, and each time they re-release it, they release more of it.
Right.
Now it's finally out. The entire concert is available. And it's just, it's stunning. It's really fantastic.
Stunning. And Capitol Records has done an amazing job, and they were very, very good to us on this movie.
Yeah.
They really were wonderful.
Yeah. And it's an album that, you know, I hear people tell me all the time that they've been listening to since they were a kid. You know, they grew up with it. They now have they had it on vinyl, they had it on CD, then they got their next CD.
Now their kids are listening to it. Their
their kids are
true.
listening to it.
I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know.
It was amazing. Sid was actually, in real life, they weren't separated at that time, were they? He was actually at the concert with her. In our movie, he's not.
Yeah.
But he was actually with her at the concert backstage.
Right, but she had signed with Freddie Fields and David Beagleman,
yeah, and their marriage
Sid
was on the rocks.
Introduced them to.
But
yeah.
they were still. In our movie, he's watched the concert, but in real life, I think he was backstage helping her with it. Now, here's an interesting thing, Lorna, that happens.
Oh, do I remember this?
Do you remember this?
Oh, yes.
Yes, hello. This is Liza's mother. Is she there? Thank you. Liza, I need you over here right now. We're leaving tonight.
Mama was going to go and make a movie in England, and my dad didn't want her taking us out of the country. We were at a hotel, and we were at the Stanhope Hotel in New York, and we had gone to the park, and we came back, and we were in my dad's room. We did this just like it happened. And, you know, all of a sudden, Mama had been upstairs with the agents and security people, and they sort of told her how to do this, how to get us away from our dad. And she came in the room, and all of a sudden, I remember hearing, he hit me. These two guys came in, and they held my dad, and Mama just took us out, just like what happened in the movie.
Just like what we're seeing.
But there were
now.
a lot of police. There were a lot of people in the hallway. It wasn't just, you know, like this. There were a lot more people, but of course, we had to scale it down. But funnily enough, we weren't afraid. We really weren't afraid.
Is that
I didn't
true,
have a
though,
shoe.
about the shoe?
Yeah, I didn't have a shoe.
Did she actually say to you, "Don't worry, they'll have shoes
There's
in London"?
shoes in London. Yeah, and I remember we got into the elevator, and there were a lot of people in the elevator, and we went downstairs, and we all got into a limousine with a lot of people, and off we went to the airport. We had no luggage. We had nothing.
Really?
We went.
You just got
Now
on
we
a
don't
plane
know
and
if
went to London.
if my mom had packed my clothes before. We swung around to get Liza, because Liza was at a friend's house, and we all went to London. Just like that.
Amazing. Auntie Mame. This is the period that starts in your mom's life of kind of Auntie Mame antics.
Yeah, but it was so funny because she
Oh, it's hard to look at this without thinking of that hat.
I know.
Donna, come on.
Yes,
You
Donna,
can tell
you can tell a version of that hat.
of what happened.
Well, okay.
It was nobody's fault. It was a mistake.
Yeah, well, when the research got to the hat maker, the hat maker made the hats to the exact proportion of the research.
Of the picture.
Of the picture.
Of a photograph.
Of a photograph of Judy Garland in this suit with her hat on her head. And I came home at about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. Came home, back to the office, which I've grown to call home, because it became my home.
Because you never left.
I never left. And suddenly on my desk was sitting this miniature hat. Tiny. And I screamed. It looked like a little monkey's hat that an organ grinder and a monkey would have.
I remember you brought it to the set with you.
I
and
called Lorna
remember
on the phone at 1:30 in the morning. I said, "You're not going to believe it. They sent me a monkey hat."
That's right. And we all had a great deal of
Laugh.
fun with that monkey hat, and it's now in my living room.
And then our
That was
brilliant
the other thing I wanted from the movie was that little hat.
And then our brilliant milliner, in like less than 2 days, made a wonderful. Kaz made this wonderful
the hat that
pillbox.
is that the hat,
The hat
she's
that
wearing?
she's wearing now. And Bob, you tell about Victor in the courtroom.
Well, I suggested that we put the other little hat on Victor, and so that they both show up in court wearing the same hat, and that when they look at each other here, the glaring look is like, "Oh, you're wearing the same hat as me." But that didn't go over too well. Victor didn't like that idea. I don't know why. I thought it was kind of funny. But is it true that you were given the choice to go with your mother or
Oh,
your
yeah.
father?
See, in those days, they...
I know this whole sequence in the movie is kind of fudgy with the custody
Yeah.
in terms
No.
of when it happened.
Yeah.
We couldn't always be true to the exact dates of things.
No. But we were given the choice. We were taken into the judges' chambers. We were asked who we wanted to live with, because in those days, they did do that to children. They don't do that anymore. But they did do that to children. And 99% of all children say their mother.
Uh-huh.
And especially with my mom.
But is it true that you said my mom
Absolutely.
needs us?
Well, I don't remember if I actually said that, but I knew that that's how I felt. And I remember sitting with our screenplay writer and saying that's how I felt, that she would need us. And there was never even a question of living with my dad.
Uh-huh. This
Yeah.
it's too bad. James has had to leave. He's not here right now because he had to go back to the set of the series that he's working on right now. But again, this was filmed in black and white. It wasn't very often now. Things are filmed in Technicolor and then in color rather, and then the color is drained out. But we chose to film all of the black and white sequences in the movie in black and white because you get I think a better silvery quality. But the recreation of this television show is it's exactly the choreography. Miranda Garrison, who was our choreographer,
Yes.
was very, very faithful to everything. Again, another person who was working totally faithfully to reality, and that's as close to a Judy Garland performance on television as I think you can get without the real Judy Garland. I think she just did an amazing job.
Yes, she did. And also Judy Davis did an amazing job because, Judy Davis has never played a musical person.
No, she did an amazing
And she did
job.
an extraordinary job because she never did an impersonation. What she did is she embodied the person.
Now, but this was a really rough time for her, this television show. You were back living in L.A.
We were back living in Los Angeles, and actually when she was doing her television show, it was a good time because she was working every day. She had fun doing this series. It was a tough time, though, because
the
again,
schedule
the
for her
schedule
was murder.
That's
Yeah.
the problem. She had a great time doing the show.
And it was rough on a lot of the other people.
But it
Because-
was also, but she loved working with the guest stars that she was working with, and she knew that if she could finish this, and if everybody promised her what they had promised her, it would financially really, really get her out of a jackpot of back taxes. So it was a really important thing that this series went the full, 4 or 5 years that they had promised her. But you've got to remember, it was 1963, and television was a lot different. And my mom was larger than life, and they were not, the television network executives were not used to seeing people like my mom on television because she did things that people just didn't do
And also,
on television. Like touching people and hugging them,
Yeah.
and it.
They never knew what kind of format to give her. I think
Oh, right.
when I look at those television shows, which At the time, I mean, the ratings were never good enough.
Well, they
and
put
there
her
was
up
all- they
against
put her up
Bonanza.
against Bonanza. It was ridiculous. But when you look at those television shows, and she's brilliant in them, and what's so extraordinary is that they've been re-released on DVD, so you can still see them.
Right, and they're
And-
they're being slowly re-released.
Well, they re-released a whole batch of them, and
Right.
now they're re-releasing the rest of them.
Exactly.
But they're extraordinary. But what is so obvious is that they could never find a format to put her in.
No, they had people who were regulars on the show, and then they had comedy sketches that were quite funny. And then they had Jerry Van Dyke was on the show, and then Mel Torme was on the show, and they didn't know how to make this. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the out of the 26 shows, all of a sudden there were no guest stars, and it was concerts.
Yeah.
They didn't really know how to
They didn't know
capture
a format to put her in.
and to capture an
and
audience.
to capture that incredible spontaneous...
She was too big for television, you know.
I don't think she was too big. I think they just weren't clever enough in knowing how to use her. Because you see, she did a show with Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin that's brilliant. It's a classic.
Well, yeah,
Her
Norman
show with-
Jewison also directed that
Her
show.
show with Barbara Streisand is amazing. They didn't have the writers. They didn't know what to do with this incredibly talented woman. I think they just
They had a very
they blew
sweet
it.
thing where they would have these tea parties on
Yeah,
her
but they
show,
were-
it was a really good idea, but it
they all
never
fizzled.
worked.
It
Yeah.
never really worked. And she was great when she was just telling anecdotes, and she was great when she was just doing what she did best, which was sort of concert-like performing.
And that's
But
what it turned into. But also in her
and those-
personal life,
those-
my dad had gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my dad was really they were really separated, and she'd met this very, very nice young actor named Mark Herron, and he came into the picture, and so she was happy. When, you know, my mom was, I think all of us, like anyone, you know, you're always happy with, you know, a new love. So she was happy, and she really thought that this was all going to work, and then it didn't.
No, it didn't. And this scene, which I think is really clever and really well written, capsulizes the entire... I think any performer who's ever had to deal, or any artist who's ever had to deal with bureaucracy, can relate to this scene. Anybody can relate to this scene when somebody is raked over the coals for doing all of the things that they do best. I think it's a really... The scene has real wit and real humor.
It does. It not
and
only
it actually captures her spirit.
Oh,
and-
absolutely. It not only captures, but it also captures the time. And it makes us all just roar with laughter about how stupid these executives were when you compare it to now. I mean, you have the greatest star in the world, and you're telling her all sorts of things about what not to do.
But I think that goes on today. It goes on in everything. It goes on in television. It goes on in movies. It goes on in art.
Yeah.
It goes on...
But it goes on with time. But the thing also, everyone has asked me constantly, did this really happen? And my answer to everyone who always asks me that is yes, but not all in one room. She did call the president. She did sing Over the Rainbow. She did all of that, but it didn't happen in the CBS executive room. But to get that whole the whole thing in, we put it in one scene.
I love this dress, Donna, too, because it's an image that is very familiar to us, even though none of us were in that executive room with her. But why is it so familiar? Have we seen her in this dress in life?
We've seen her in her TV show in this dress, and we've also seen her on talk shows in this dress. But I have to credit this idea to Judy Davis.
Yeah.
Because she really felt she wanted something that liberating and that simple, and the idea of that little simple black sheath, which we never had any other opportunity to use. Mm-hmm. And
did she wear something like that on Jack Parr's show?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Now, she wore that under sometimes with coats and things, but she actually wore this.
She had a lot of these little black dresses.
Yeah, because
she looked good in them.
It's such a great image. I mean, you feel when you look at that, you think, oh yeah, if you've seen Judy Garland in that period, that's such a familiar image.
And it totally liberates, you know, Judy Davis as an actress too, to really, you know, be this basic Garland,
Uh-huh. I remember when we filmed this scene, when she comes into the room, she's supposed to say, "Oh, do I get the big chair?" But they couldn't get the chair. They got the wrong chairs there. And so she couldn't say that line. And we waited for the longest time for them to get the right chairs because we really loved that line. We all wanted her to be able to say, "Oh, do I get the big chair?"
Right.
But we didn't have the right chair.
No,
so she
another
had to
movie
say-
company had rented it
They
out.
had somehow mislabeled which company was supposed to get the chairs, and the wrong company got the chairs, and so she had to say, "Oh, I get to sit at the head of the table." But she did call Jack Kennedy, and that's real. I mean, she did.
Well,
do
Norman
that.
Jewison tells the story,
Yeah.
and he has told the story of that she did that in front of him. She called Jack Kennedy, a lot because they were good friends.
But one thing that I think is interesting is that people might not know is that when Kennedy was assassinated, she wanted to sing the Battle Hymn of the Republic,
Right.
and the network was very much against it. And they actually said to her, "By the time this show airs, nobody's going to remember who Kennedy was."
That's right.
That's what they actually said to her, and
Yeah.
she went on and she sang it anyway. And it's
And
like one of the most.
It's brilliant.
It's one of the most famous things about her television series.
Yeah.
If you say what are the most memorable moments,
Yeah,
people would
and at the
say
rehearsal.
sing Battle Hymn of the Republic.
And at the rehearsal, when they, because sometimes they shoot rehearsals, under her breath, she said, "This is for you, Jack."
Really?
Yeah, under her breath, she did say that. But what's I love about this scene was that this was so eerie, how Judy Davis did this, and it is Judy Davis singing.
Yeah, that
It
is
is-
Judy Davis singing over the rainbow.
And it's so wonderful.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in that tiny little corridor, and I was sitting next to our sound man, and we just looked at each other like, "Do you believe what we're seeing here?" Because this was one of the times, as many times we had in this movie, one of the times where it was truly, I thought that my mom had, come back as a ghost, and was standing right behind Judy Davis, saying, "This is the right thing to do." And this happened.
Yeah, this happened. What
Yeah.
happened after her show was canceled, she wound up broke again because the IRS took all of her money.
Right.
You'll have to sue for your money. He says you fired him more than once.
Why didn't you listen to me the first time? Dear Miss Garland, didn't have the guts to keep up.
She was angry, and she was throwing stuff in the swimming pool. And I remember I was watching this.
Did she do that a lot? I mean, did she tear up the house a lot?
Not a lot. No, she didn't tear up the house a lot. No, but when she was angry, she was... she was really angry. But it was... she did throw herself in the pool.
Yeah.
And I do remember my brother saying, "Maybe that'll cool her off."
Yeah, but she did throw things. I mean,
Oh,
she
she
had
did.
a
She had a
reputation
great,
for throwing
well,
things
yeah.
around and
If you
breaking
see
up
the
rooms
if you
and
see
stuff.
but if you see the pirate, she's got a really good
Yeah,
left
yeah.
hook. She could really throw.
She could really break a vase.
She really
huh?
could throw a vase.
Yeah. This is a really sad episode in her life,
Yes.
I think, much more than we were able to even capture in the movie.
Right, and
I
in
think.
reality, I wasn't.
You weren't there.
I wasn't
know.
in
reality,
Australia.
you weren't there, but we put you there. I'll tell you why we put you
Right.
there. Because at a certain point, it being based on your book, we felt that it was important to start shifting the focus of the movie more and more towards your point of view, since
Correct.
it is you telling the story. So we decided that you should be a witness to this, even though I know in reality
And
you
this
weren't.
was and this was also, it represented also the first time that we really saw my mom struggling.
Well-
and because we'd been hidden from it a great deal, and we had to show that all of a sudden Joe and I were aware that things were not right and things were not going well.
Uh-huh. But what happened in Australia is actually the subject of a documentary. I mean, it's really upsetting. She came to Sydney, and she did this brilliant concert.
Right.
And then, but when they got into the country, the customs officials confiscated all of her medication.
Right.
And so she had to replace all of these drugs that she was taking, and the dosages in Australia are much different than the dosages in America. So she was over-medicated. And so when they got to Melbourne, she couldn't go out on stage, and the promoters insisted that she do the show, and it was really...
Which she did do.
She did. She went out there and she tried to get through it, and she forgot words, and it was really incredibly sad. And people who were actually there said that their first thought was, oh my God, just let her get off the stage. She's sick. Why did they ever let her on?
Right.
And
people started to boo, and people started to walk out.
Yeah, well, there was apparently this one group of people that started ribbing her, and they got the rest of the, they sort of thought it was cool.
Yeah.
And so they were shouting out things to her like, you're late, why don't you go home, you're drunk.
They were very cruel.
They were extremely cruel.
They were very, very cruel. And they didn't have much compassion for her at that point. And the Melbourne show
turned
was
into
a disaster.
But what's not seen in the movie, and in actuality, she actually, I mean, it was a disaster for her, and apparently there were a couple of suicide attempts that followed it, and she went on to Hong Kong and almost died.
Yes.
In fact, you were told that she was dead at one point.
Well, I heard it
you?
on the radio. I heard, as I write in my book, I heard that she had died in Hong Kong, and the nanny just immediately turned off the radio, and she did, her heart stopped and all of that, but they did revive her.
But then she went on to be really triumphant. She went back to London and performed with Liza at the Palladium, and it was a huge success. So she actually returned from that whole concert gig really riding high. I mean, she
absolutely.
really did well.
She was really...
And then her marriage with Mark Herron
broke up
and deteriorated, and she went into a kind of decline.
A very, very serious decline. And
this is the part of the movie where we never got out of bed. She was in bed all the time. The stand-ins would come and look around and say, okay, they just jump into the bed. This was the bed period, when she was in bed all the time.
But I must say, the actress who is playing me, Alison Pill, is just one of the most talented young actors I've ever known. And this was this was the hardest part for me of watching and making this movie. It wasn't that hard watching Judy Davis, because I knew it was Judy Davis. And it wasn't at all hard watching Tammy, but watching Alison play me was extremely hard because she was so good. And that was harder than anything I've ever watched.
Yeah, she's a terrific actress. She's from Toronto. I did another movie with her. She's just a wonderful actress. I think she's going to have a brilliant future. Really brilliant.
She's quite something, and she's sort of become like my little sister. She calls me whenever she comes, into Los Angeles, and she's also just a wonderful human being. But she's so gifted
and so bright. She's so intelligent.
Yeah, she's really, really, really extraordinary, and she captured me so well, and never really asked me.
This is a really sad depiction of two kids who have been at a certain time in their lives been more or less, even though their mother is there.
Right, but this
abandoned.
had taken a long time to happen. We get it, of course, for time reasons and all that in the movie. It seemed sort of like a short time, but this was over a period of time. It was a long time.
Well, how bad did it get for you and Joey?
All the help was gone, and
there was literally no money, no food?
No, there was no money. And who was going to go shopping? I couldn't go shopping.
Well, we mentioned in the movie that you're going to go to Mrs. Baker's for dinner. In reality, that was Cloris Leachman, wasn't it?
Right, it was Cloris Leachman, Mrs. England. Yeah. She was married to George England, and she had a wonderful family that I was very friendly with. And we used to just go down the street all the time to Mrs. England's house, as we used to say. It was Cloris Leachman. And it was a really hard time at that point because there was no money coming in, and the IRS was after her, and she wasn't very well. And it was a very, very, very difficult period for all of us. And that's when that would happen, she would always call my dad, and he would come to the rescue.
Is he in reality the person who got her, well, or you probably don't even know for sure, got her rebooked into the Palace?
He did.
It was him?
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
in the 1967 show.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
And he got her booked into the Palace, and that's when I did the show with her.
And Joey.
Me and Joey, in that yellow dress. And Donna.
Whoa. Donna. You really got it.
You really got it.
Look at that. I mean, I've seen photographs of this, and I actually saw this show. I was at this 1967 Palace show. But it's extraordinary.
And that outfit was made for Mama when she was going to make a movie called Valley of the Dolls, and she didn't make the movie, but she took the costume. And it was a Bill Trevia costume, and it was amazing that how you recreated it with the green scarf and all that.
Well, the research is all there, and again, John David Ridge beautifully, because that was all very copper, and it was more heavily beaded than we actually did. But I think we got the illusion of it, and I think we got the feeling of it really.
Oh yeah, really.
Right on. You know.
That's not Judy Davis. That was a photo double. But this scene always upsets me.
What wasn't Judy
Lying
Davis?
in bed.
Oh, okay, good, because you didn't say that.
That wasn't Judy Davis when that door closed.
Right.
That was a photo double. But this scene has always been one of the most disturbing things to me. This sort of passing on to you of the responsibility of taking care of your mother's medication. Mm-hmm. That really happened.
Yeah,
so
it did.
you were the one. You were the keeper of the medicine.
Well, when you have someone who's in your family who's ill, you do everything you can to make sure that they're all right. And in those days, again, we didn't have Betty Ford, and we didn't have the knowledge, and we didn't have the education, and we didn't have any of the knowledge that we have today about the disease of addiction. We didn't know the word enabling. We didn't know anything. So what we thought we were doing was the right thing. And we thought by making sure that her dosages were there, but you've got to remember something. This was all given to her by doctors.
Uh-huh.
So that meant it was medication by doctors.
Right.
And as a child, all you think about is making sure your mom is okay. And it's her medication. We never thought of it as drugs. Drugs was something really bad and awful. This was her medication. We never equated that we shouldn't have been doing that. But once you have this in your family, you don't know what to do except continue the pattern.
We're gonna have an adventure. It's time for the old switcheroo.
Mama, do we have to do this right now?
Yes, we do, Joe. Unless you want to visit your mama in the poorhouse. Now.
Well, what did it do to your relationship with her? You being the one who sort of was... There's a scene here where she bursts into your room. It's going to come up.
Yeah.
But was there a lot of resentment on her part towards you because you were the one who had the medicine?
No. There wasn't a lot of resentment. It was that there were certain people that would also have the medication at that time. And it wasn't just me by myself.
Sure. If the coast's clear, head for the elevator. Just pretend we're going shopping. Last one to the St. Moritz is a rotten egg.
This is so funny. I remember this. This is based on a true incidents of you putting on all your clothes to get out of hotels and move around. But Donna, I can remember you putting the clothes on them and piling them up and really making them look funny. I mean, it's
Because
really
we didn't
funny.
look quite as funny as Donna made us
I'm
look.
sure, but we decided to go for funny.
You had called me to the set and said,
I
come
said,
on, they don't
come
look
on.
funny enough.
They don't look funny enough. Make them look funnier.
So it was like, okay.
Yeah, because I thought it was important. First of all, one of the things that we were trying to do was to keep this from becoming some sort of somber, deadly
Melodrama.
tome. You know, just the dramatic aspects of it are
there.
We don't have to heighten them, but also to
keep her sense of
her
humor.
sense of humor. She had such a brilliant sense of humor.
Yes.
So even if you weren't always able to capture that verbally, but just by her actions, we tried to create the spirit of her humor.
Yeah, but I think what's also very, very important is how being a parent with dire situations, how she never let us be frightened. It always was a game. It always was some kind of a, we were never frightened, but thinking about it now as an adult, how scared she must have been.
Yeah.
And that's when I always say that my mother was a good mother. She really was, because she was always thinking about us and how we would react to things and how she could make us not be frightened.
Uh-huh. And, well, that's what we were trying to do. We were trying to somehow invest this portion of the movie, which is it's such a downward spiral.
Right, and
but
it's also a thing where, Bob, what you did brilliantly was that you and I had so many, hour long conversations about what these situations were really like when she was threatening to jump out of windows and all of that. And there's such a difference in writing it in a book where you can really, really take the time and all of that, and how you took these situations and never made her look like a bad parent. And that was a really wonderful thing that you did.
I think that she always struggled to be a good parent.
Yes.
I think that it's very obvious that she really tried her best to be a good parent, and I really wanted that to come across. And I remember when the script was first submitted to some of the higher-ups, they were very concerned about it, that she not turn into some sort of hateful creature. And I kept saying, what's going to redeem it? You don't understand. What will redeem it, I promise you, is the humor. There will be humor. It doesn't seem humorous right now when you're reading it, but it will be handled with a sense of humor, which I think we were able to do. And an enormous sense of compassion.
And you always were on her side.
Yeah, well, that's because I think one of the interesting things about making this movie, and I know it happened to a number of us, people ask me 3/4 of the way into shooting it, they ask me after, they still ask me, so, are you sick of Judy Garland? Have you had enough of Judy Garland? And the truth of the matter is I always loved Judy Garland. I always was a Judy Garland fan, and I always had tremendous affection for her. I was never a fan of very many people, but I was a fan of Judy Garland's. But I wound up loving her more and more and more and more and more, and I think I love her more now. Mm-hmm. And I think that all of us, Judy Davis, every one of us working on the movie, found that to be true. And so these scenes are full of compassion and love.
And that's what made it into such a great movie.
And there were choices to be made. For example, in that scene where she's ripping up the room, she goes over to the dresser, and she's leaning over the dresser, and she says, they took everything away from me, and, I sang for you sons of bitches and all. And the obvious thing would have been to cut to a close-up of her from the other angle over the dresser so that you saw her. And it was a conscious choice not to do that, because in doing that, first of all, I felt two things. One, you're manipulating reality. Once you start cutting, you're saying it's a dramatic thing. It's not something that's really happening. And number two, I didn't want to get into that mommy dearest thing.
Oh.
As soon as you show that close-up of her with her face contorted, looking for the drugs, you're into mommy dearest. And so we just stayed on her back. And you
And
never
we were
saw...
all so conscious of never, ever, ever, ever doing that.
That's what I'm saying. But those decisions were conscious, and they were, and I think people should know that. I mean, it's
Because
not
let's
an
face it,
accident.
they were gunning for us.
Well, but
There were
there's
people out
enough.
there that thought, okay, you're going to make this movie, and it's just you're going to walk into the minefield and get blown up.
Well, I think there's
And we didn't.
there's another movie to be had here, which could have been much more sensational had everybody not had the same point of view. And,
Right.
And much more sensational and much more horrifying, almost in that territory of Mommy Dearest, and we just never went there. I mean, it was a conscious choice
Yes,
not
it
to go
was.
there, and to tell the story as compassionately and as lovingly as possible.
Absolutely. And, when we see these scenes, these were very, very difficult. In fact, these were the times that I wasn't on the set. I didn't want to be around to relive this. And I remember sitting with you and telling you exactly what I said. And on the telephone conversation that does come up, that's exactly word for word what I said and what I did. And Allison did it so brilliantly, and so it's probably these are the scenes in this movie that I walk out of the room.
Uh-huh.
And you have seen me get up.
Oh, yeah, I've seen you get up and
walk out of the room. It's just a little
Well, this
too
actually
hard.
makes me laugh because this scene, which is really painful to watch, and it's really so upsetting, to me was when we were filming this side of it.
Right.
When we were
I wasn't there. Right.
Well, we were filming Allison in bed. When
Right.
we did Judy on the phone, Allison was there and did it for her.
Mm-hmm.
So Judy very fairly and very professionally said, I think I have to be there when we do Allison's side
Right.
of it. So we were in this hospital and we built this set, and she came and she said her lines off camera. And it was always weird because she would come to the set dressed as your mom every day, and you'd see her with the dark eyes and the dark hair, and then
Right.
you'd run into her in the lobby of the hotel or on a Saturday night when you'd
right.
go to dinner, and you'd see this blue-eyed person with short, punky hair.
Yeah, right.
And you go, wait, who is this with her
Exactly.
Australian accent? But what was so weird was that she was sitting there on the other side of the wall, which you can't see, obviously,
Right.
it's off camera, and she was saying her lines as your mom talking like Judy Garland.
But she was
But
Judy
she
Davis.
was sitting there with her blue eyes and her short, punky haircut and in a dress with her legs crossed, smoking a cigarette as Judy Davis. And it was bizarre. It was like that, like in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, when Betty Davis would start talking like Joan Crawford,
Right.
or something. It's like, what? What is this? It was kind of creepy all the time. It was all these identities flying around.
Oh,
you know?
yes.
Who are these people?
But I really, 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 this scene, I just, was just so painful.
Well, it's
for me
funny.
to watch, and Allison was
She is so good.
wonderful in this.
Yeah, but I love what Judy Davis does at the end of this scene, and it was when she puts down the phone and she looks up and she has that same look on her face as she did as a young girl.
Yeah.
She gets that same kind of lost Dorothy, the young Judy Garland,
Yeah.
this moment, and she looks up and she just looks like a little girl,
So lost.
little girl.
Yeah.
So what you were saying before about her fear,
Yeah.
I mean, she was facing such incredibly difficult circumstances.
Absolutely.
And then we conveniently cut quite a bit here, so we don't see a lot of the more horrific.
Yeah, no, it got
I mean,
it.
a few. I remember reading some comments somewhere saying, "Oh, we wish they had stayed more and watched her drugging up more,
Oh,
and
no,
shooting
no,
up
no.
more."
Oh, God.
And that was really, again, a choice not to. We thought that there was no reason to make this
Absolutely.
movie sensational. We
No,
wanted
because-
to be as true to the emotional experience, and
We didn't want to take it from being a masterpiece into the Inquirer. And that's what we were and that's where you came along and said, no, we're not going to do that.
Well, we just didn't want it to be, as you say, we just didn't want it to be something that you would just pick up in a tabloid and read, or one of those kind of behind-the-scenes things that you see on, on television, on tabloid television. But the other thing
and I don't
that
think
was,
Judy Davis would have done that
none
either.
of us wanted to do that. And one of the things that was very, very important to me from the outset, and Craig Zaden and Neil Marin, who were the executive producers, one of the things that we really all felt very deeply is that we couldn't tell the story of Judy Garland's life without also telling about her artistry. We wanted the movie to talk about her artistry and not just about her personal life.
Exactly.
We wanted it to be a portrait of an artist.
Absolutely.
And I think that everybody involved, Alliance Atlantis, ABC, was very generous to us in that they let us put in these long musical sequences that normally you would not find in a movie like this. So you see the trolley song, you see her sitting on the edge of the stage singing Over the Rainbow,
Right.
You see so much of Carnegie Hall, you see these things that normally movies like this, network executives and production companies and studios get nervous. You can't have somebody sing for that long, and it's not her singing, it's just lip syncing.
Well, that's why
I thank all. I'm grateful to all those people, and I really think it's worth mentioning that.
Oh, absolutely.
That they were generous to her and to us as filmmakers to recognize the importance of that and to give us the room to do it in. Not one moment of musical performance has been edited out of this movie.
No.
Everything that we shot is in the movie. We've edited other things. Other things were condensed. Other things were shortened. But none of her performances, those are exactly the way they were filmed. Nobody ever asked us to cut a number or to cut part of a number. Nothing was taken out. There was only for credit sequence reasons one song was eliminated, but not from the broadcast. It's in the DVD as a special, but it was aired. It was there.
Yeah, the only footage that I wish didn't. Well, you can't. There are certain things that you always do wish were left alone, and all that. It was sort of an interesting. If anything had to be eliminated, was Melbourne.
Yeah, Melbourne was taken out. We had actually shot the Melbourne concert, but there was no music in that. Actually, it was just partial singing.
Right.
Yeah, but that was taken out for other reasons. But the performance stuff was all left in.
Always, yeah.
And this was toned down. Because in reality, he couldn't get in the bathroom. And
we all made these choices that we were not going to make this movie into something unattractive.
Well, not unattractive. I don't think that's the right word. I think sensational. And we showed her close the bathroom door.
Right.
Nobody knows what went on in that bathroom, and so we don't show it. We chose not to show it.
Right, which was also it gave her. And this was all handled very, very well because it's just a quick second, and you don't need to dwell on that.
Yeah. Very sad.
Yes, it was very, very, very sad.
Still very, very sad.
Yes.
47 years old. She was only 47 when she died.
She was only 47.
It's horrible.
Yeah. But what a life in 47 years, and what she left us, and what she left to me is just extraordinary, and I'm so grateful for all of that, and so grateful that I have all those movies and all of those memories and all of that. And what we did is this is a love letter to her.
I thought that I'm sorry. I hope it is. But I just wanted to mention, Donna, you've been out of the conversation for a while. I remember being annoyed at you, Donna, for this. Because it was supposed to be sweltering heat. They're all wearing sweaters.
Right.
And I thought and we talked about it. And it was your choice, and I went along with it, and I think you were right. I think had they been wearing little summer T-shirts and tank tops, it would have not had the weight that it needed.
Because it was June.
It was June,
Yeah.
and then you see the funeral. Look at these, how hot it was. You can see how hot it was in New York.
Right.
And I remember saying to you, why are they all wearing sweaters? It's hot. And you held your ground, and I actually...
I didn't say this is scene 75 where...
No, you didn't say,
It must be Venice.
Where is this? Where are we? What is this? No, you didn't. You didn't.
And I
think you were right.
Yeah.
And
I love the way that this movie ends, that we go back and we just, that we don't end on some awfully dreadful, sad note, that we go back and just show all of the wonderful, we bring Tammy back, and we go back to all of the wonderful performances and all of that, and we sort of recap her life. And
well,
at the
it was
end
an attempt again to capture that spirit, that the spirit of the entertainer that came first in her life, was to go out there and entertain, make them laugh, and make people feel that happy days are here again, and
and
forget your
her spirit.
troubles, come on, get happy. And that was her spirit.
That's
that was
right.
really underneath. There was a lot of pain and there was a lot of torture, but as a performer, which is the thing that I think she lived to do, her point was get happy. You know?
Absolutely, and the point is there will never be anyone like her ever again.
No, never again. She was totally unique. And this is, I watch this and it just, to me, it's just so amazing. And I remember the night that we filmed it, and we decided to do this 360 thing around her, and Judy was a little bit leery of it. She thought, well, I learned all this choreography. You're never going to see it all if you're going around on my back.
And there it is.
And there it is. I think it was James who said to her, yeah, but you're going to heaven. You're going to heaven.
Get ready. Get ready for the judgment day.
We had tried something in the Palace Theater where we went 180 degrees around her, and then I thought, well, let's try and go 360. Let's go the full distance. Anyway, we all liked the movie. Well, this was a pleasure. It was a pleasure being in a room with you guys again. And
like we never were in a room together.
I haven't seen you in so long.